It's an honor to have you here, and I'm very, very excited, to sort of try and move a little bit away from some of the realities that we are all discussing in the world of policy at the moment. I mean, there's a war in Ukraine, there is currency appreciation, depreciation, there's a lot of uncertainty. So I thought, we'd liven it up a little bit, and having one of the great minds of Japan. And it's really an honor to present you with Professor Ikegami. Ikegami-sensei is currently a professor at Tokyo University. He also got his PhD in physics from the University of Tokyo, and then very quickly moved on from the dark realms of physics into the more exciting worlds of nonlinear systems, complex systems, artificial intelligence, and sentient beings. And without further ado, Ikegami-sensei, you have the floor for your opening remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, and it's my great honor to be here. Such a wonderful place, and with him and also my friends. Today, I'm going to talk about my Android, and see how he is creative, and then not so scary. And then I hope this one is going to be your friend in the future, and that we can discuss and then talk. Okay. So my main big question is, where does the mind come from? Right. That's kind of my obsession since I was a student. And then I was using like math or computer simulations and other things. But recently, I'm using Android and more, like a chemical experiment, like a real stuff. It's more tangible stuff than computer simulation. That's the thing that I'm going to talk about. So I'm working with Hiroshi Ishiguro from Osaka University, that he got an Android. And when he was listening to my talk, and he said, artificial life is very interesting, but my talk was a bit difficult to understand. So why don't you use a more simply understandable thing like Android? So I took his idea, then I used his Android then I installed all my softwares and computer programs to see how the Android becomes life, living systems. That's kind of my big ambition. So when I made this Android in 2016, a bunch of press came from all over the world. And here's the one that came from UK.
Meet Alter the Android, a robot with artificial intelligence so advanced that his creators claim that he has free will.
But
the new humanoid robot interacts with people and moves through an embedded central pattern generator, or CPG, which allows him to express a wide range of different motions. The secret of the CPG is that it's designed to work almost exactly like a human brain. The CPG has its own neural network that mimics human neurons, allowing the robot to create movement patterns of his own, influenced by sensors that detect proximity, temperature, and humidity. The setup isn't quite at the level of creating human-like movement, but it does give the viewer the very strange sensation that this particular robot is somehow alive. Alter the Android is a further demonstration of the progress of artificial intelligence and robotics, and may be similar to the robots that we can expect in the future. If you want to catch Alter before he goes, he is on display for 1 week at Japan's National Science Museum in Tokyo.
He's still there, right? So but people get interested in this. So after like 4 years, he's still there, right? And then, one of my old friends, he's Roderick Brooks. He's the father of Roomba. Maybe you know this automatic cleaner systems. And then he wrote a very interesting paper in 2002 or something that, those androids or robots, or, the Roomba, is very nice, very clear, but it's not living. There's no life in there, right? So that's the problem. And then been discussing, and he wrote wrote the paper that's saying, maybe some few parameters are wrong, right? Because it's tons of parameters to describe this robot, right? So if we choose the right parameters, then the robot becomes alive. Or maybe, this goes a different way. Or maybe the complexity threshold is lower, right? Maybe we should make a more complex robot, then it should become live, right? But still the complexity is low. That's why the problem is, right? Then maybe there's a lack of computing power. So this one was 2002. Now that we have a bunch of computing power, however, still the robot is not so much lifelike. And then maybe the fourth condition, or maybe the predicted result, the cause is missing something fundamental principle. Because my background in physics, that we always, what comes after theory of relativity, quantum mechanics, then the third one should be the principle, fundamental, principle understanding life, right? So we are looking for this, those conditions, and then I invited him to my conference in 2018. I organized an artificial life conference, international conference, and he was the keynote for this conference. And then I told him, we're still looking for what is missing in our program, and we call it Brooks juice, right? So that's why when he came to this conference, he says, "Hey, what's Brooks juice?" He didn't know that we call it Brooks juice, right? So artificial life is about, looking for the Brooks juice. So what is Brooks juice? That's the key issue. Then I redesigned this Android, which now is called Alta 3. Alta means the alternative machine. So Alta 3, thanks to Mixi, we made it. And then this one, I brought it to Düsseldorf. So this time, Android can mimic the behavior in front of you. So he has a camera in his eyes so that he can see how the people behave. Then he tried to mimic the behavior. So that's what this Android is about. And actually, this is my PhD student, and he programmed. So you can see this imitation is not perfect, right? But still, you can see that this guy tried to imitate, right? So the intention of imitating the people is more important than just perfectly imitating, because people notice that, okay, this guy wants to imitate me, but he fails to do it. So the people try to imitate Android, right? So the mutual imitation emerges. I thought it was interesting. Therefore, as a result, the imitation becomes more perfect, right? Because the people are imitating Android, and Android is also imitating people. And then imitation is very important, I think. There's a tons of studies on what is the imitation, the function of imitation, and when the imitation starts. So this is the famous work from Melsov back in 1980, that newborn babies can imitate mother's face. So when the mother, smiles, the baby smiles, mother gets angry face, and then mother's, baby also gets angry face. So that is called newborn primitive imitation things. But when the baby grown up, right, it starts not to imitating, of course, right? I mean, always imitating, then it looks a bit strange, right? I mean, at one point that he tried not to imitate, and that's how I think the creation of your own self, sense of self emerges. I think at the age of, I don't know, maybe after like 3 months, that he stops imitating. And then he tried to be more independent and autonomous agent. Also, this girl raised by a wolf. I don't know whether this is a true story or not, but the BBC, there's a documentary movie that there is a girl that raised by a wolf. And an interesting point with the wolf, the girl raised by the wolf, and then the normal baby that mimics mother's face, is that maybe the baby born without mind. Mind is copied or installed from the mother. That's the kind of my hypothesis. So I call it offloaded mind. The baby can born without mind, but gradually, because imitating mother's face and behavior, the mind is copied from mother to baby. That's why the human gets the mind. So I thought this idea was interesting. That I tried to do it with the android, and when the android can imitate human behavior, does mind a copy? Mind can be copied from people to android. That's the idea. Right? So it's so difficult to make a mind from scratch. But if you can copy mind from human, then it's possible, right? So we cannot understand what's the origin of mind itself. But if the android can copy mind from human, and that's one big success if we can make a lifelike robot. So I call it mind is contagious. It's in a very normal conditions, like me and talking with Joseph, then mind is also exchanging. Our consciousness is always, interfering with each other. That's what, our society is about. Meeting friend means that exchanging mind and consciousness with others. So I asked my students to imitate android's behavior now, right? Intentionally imitate my android's behavior. And then also android is imitating this human behavior. And see how it goes, right? Because human is also not so good at, imitating behavior, right? But they try to, right? Yeah, dancing. Then I switched to the two androids. So I have Ortho 3 and Ortho 2, right? And their hardware is a little bit different, but they completed the same software inside the Android. Then I see how they imitating with each other. Sorry, it's a bit noisy. It's in Miraikan, so that's why. It's in Chinese. So their behavior is not so vivid comparing with a human versus android, right? Because they are imitating each other, right? So we can expect that when the android versus android with the same software, then they might end up with doing some just stood up, or just standing up, or just doing the same thing again and again, right? But yeah, it's close to that kind of behavior, right? But when the human and android is interacting with each other, then their behavior is more complex, I thought, right? So, but so we try to reduce the dimensionality of the behavior and then see how it works. So you can see this more pink and yellow distributed pattern is whether the android's behavior against human look like. So the android's behavior against human, the behavior becomes more complex and diverse and interesting. But when the android is interacting with another android, the behavior is more simple. And then it's like, on the right-hand side, you can see green and blue things. So android must interact with human to get more nice and various behaviors. So it's like newborn baby that imitate mother's behavior. Then their behavior becomes more interesting, right? And then also the wolves has a mind from the wolf, so that her behavior becomes more wolf-like. So I think there is some trick and a hint that I will have to think here. So I said, if the human mind is creative and imitative, then the creativity of machines must also come from imitating humans. So once you got an imitative, a creative mindset from human, then if this android is interacting with other androids, maybe the creativity is transferred from human to android, android to android, and android to android. So the first point is quite important, I think. So we're now sort of designing how you can, make a copyable machines, copyable, imitating mind, and that's, I think, it's very important. And then have to, so that I want to change people's mind, that machines that are not seen as a mechanism, but rather as a class of actors with particular behaviors, patterns, and ecology. That's what this guy says, and I'm very much sympathetic with this idea. There's a black box that people don't like it because people don't understand how the android works, but therefore you can trust him, you can sympathetic with him, right? Because if you become friend with others, you don't want it to open up his brain and see how it works, right? Therefore, you can be friend with him. So it's a black box, or uncertainty helps you to be friend with others. So that's kind of philosophy that I have. And then also, recently, I played around with GPT-3. GPT-3 is a massive neural network, quite recently created by OpenAI in the United States. That GPT-3 is an artificial neural model with, I think it's 5 trillion corpuses that he learns. And then, he can create creative sentences with 955 billion parameters, which is way massive, right? But then the people think he just remembers all the sentences and understands the correlation between words and words. Then this GPT-3 can generate very creative poems and also nice sentences or the novels. So this is the one that I put the Decay of Angels, which is the famous Mishima Yukio's novel. Then this GPT-3 created this poem, which is, I think it's beautiful. Like, I don't know why he created this poem, but this is one of the things that he did. So I put this one with my artist friend, who is Keiichiro Shibuya, that this Auto 3 with this song that he can sing. This is sponsored by Nike. So when the Keiichiro plays the piano, then this android sings this song. So this android is very, reactive this time. But as you see, this becomes more emotional, right? The emotion and then also the intelligence is not something that is so secret, but it is created from the things that you can learn, or you can, if you can imitate the behavior of humankind, then the creation is coming from there, right? There's no such like a secret, but imitation can be the one big source. So many animals, like from the apes and monkeys, they can also imitate others. So creativity that is is from copying something, right? So, but the people say that the Japanese people cannot be original, but they can ape, some European cultures and things. However, that's where the creativity is coming from. So, because my, Joseph and also Patrick also always say that Japan still can have a bunch of good things, and then I think even we cannot go to the first position, but the second, how to make a better something by copying from the first one is probably the good thing with the Japanese people, I think. And these are my collaborators in my lab. Thank you very much.
Well, Ikegami-sensei, wow. I don't know where to start because this can go in many, many different directions. But let me ask, first of all, sort of a practical question, right? For example, you had the collaboration with your musician friend, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you actually program the Android, right, to be reactive or to be specifically reactive to the piano playing, and then if it's a trumpet player, do you have to change it, or how does the machine know what to do?
Well, there's two things. One is very reactive, right? So when he plays the piano or somebody plays violin or something, the Android can react to the sound, right? And then with the sound, he can associate it with the song. So that's what he can do it, right? But this is very reactive, right? So if you push the button, then it's something like pumping up, right? So it's not lifelike, right? But on the other hand, he also has a neural network, artificial neural network inside, and this one has its own intrinsic fluctuations, the intrinsic, complexity, right? So without having a stimulus from outside, this internal neural network still generates some patterns and behaviors. So that's a combination of intrinsic fluctuation plus a reactive behavior to the environment, right? So that's I programmed first time. Then we don't touch it, so that they just generate this, complex intrinsic patterns plus reactive behaviors that generates this kind of behavior.
But it's interesting, right? Because again, there's so many different layers to this. But okay, I think we all understand and get the imitation part, right? But the spark of life. Right? So the initiation part. Why is it when Kimura-san sees a baby in a crib, he goes up and he goes, where does that come from? Would the machine do this?
I haven't tried that, but yeah, it's a difficult part, right? The initiation, how to motivate Android to something is very difficult. And then we do expect that if the Android can learn more and more and it can share our culture and then learn the behavior of the humankind, then probably that can motivate Android to do something which is quite similar or adequate to the context, right? Like when Android sees a baby face, and he tried to let him surprise or laugh. So I think it's everything is hidden behind the cultural structures and patterns, so that the Android must learn and share the culture that we have.
Yeah. Let me ask you. Sorry, go ahead.
Obviously, there's a memory element in
yes.
this, and initiation must be related to access to memory.
Yes.
The building of that memory have you observed a difference in the way the Android takes up and is able to imitate between androids who've been exposed primarily to one individual and androids who've been exposed to multiple individuals?
Oh, that's a very interesting and scientific question. Yes, and actually, that's very different when how he interact with other people. If he only learns from one person and whether he learns from many persons, its behavior is going to be different. And then that's also, that's it. So it pretty much depending on how he learns from other people, and then how many, and then what the variety of the behavior that he can learn from others. And that is memorized in his robot. Then he access to the memory. So when he imitate, if he cannot imitate directly from the one that he sees in front of him, then he accesses the memory and then try to recreate from the memory. So that, memory structure is very important. Yes.
So catching on to that, the other question I had is like when your pianist friend, when he plays the song for the first time, right? There will be a certain, reaction from the android. If he plays the same music a second and a third time, will the android have the same reaction?
No, of course not.
Of course not. Well, it's like, when I play piano, it always sounds similarly bad. No, but...
Well, but this time, because of this intrinsic complexity or intrinsic autonomy, that's a very important point. Spontaneity of the robot is something that we shouldn't miss, right? If it does the same thing again and again when the response is the same, that's what we call a machine, right? But the android he has his own, so I don't say it's a free will, but Android has something that you cannot predict completely from outside.
But how does that work? You write in the coding, in the computer program, in the run, like when you hear something once, you do it X, but if you hear it again, you cannot do X. You have to do X plus 1. Or how does the Android know that it needs to be different? Does the Android feel that it's different?
But that's a different issue. I think that's a difficult question. I mean, but he can be different because, I mean, everybody knows that the weather forecast is, you cannot 100% predict the weather tomorrow, right? Not because you don't have the enough information, but because weather is determined by the nonlinear equations and where the chaos exists. So the chaos means even if you have 3 degrees of freedom, you cannot 100% predict tomorrow's weather, right? So numbers are not the point, but the nonlinearity with only 3 degrees of freedom that you can't predict what happens in tomorrow, right? So that's also the part of this robot. This neural network or other systems creates deterministic but chaotic behavior, which you cannot predict what happens, even if you know the equation completely. But certain kind of noise, like the information from eye, some other initial configurations with real numbers, that changes the future behavior. Right. So I don't know whether that's the case of human too, but in case of Android, initially, this is very unstable, right? Unstable means that you cannot predict 100% what he's going to do, right? But because of this nonlinearity and the complexity and nonlinear equations, because of the chaos, you cannot predict, right?
Would that change if you had more computing power, or is it just a function of the nonlinear functions?
I mean, well, it doesn't change. The chaos is, as I said, it's 3 degrees of freedom. It's easy to compute with your own, like iPhone can also compute this, chaos. But still, even if you increase the computers and, computation power, then the chaos, the unpredictability still exists. And then, the chaos, it does exist. So it doesn't matter whether you have a bunch of computer power or anything, but unpredictable, that still exists.
Yeah. May I ask a personal question? Yeah. Why did you explore the interaction with art, with music? Why didn't you choose the path of, the interaction of the Android with the stock market or with?
That's a very good idea. I should do that.
No, but like in all seriousness, I mean, your personal genesis, right? I mean, you're a physicist. How did you end up there, and why the switch, and why the particular focus on dare I say creativity in the artistic space, rather than something that's more applicable in an engineering or in a financial or an economic fashion?
I think artists are very interested in what's the cutting edge of science always. I think one of my friend from Germany, his name is Carsten Nicolai. Carsten Nicolai is he's from Eastern Germany, and he told me that one day that he was walking in New York and then went to the bookstore, and he found my paper there, right? And he read it. The paper was about the creative noise in evolutionary systems.
Creative noise in evolutionary systems.
Yeah.
Yes, I read this all the time.
So that he liked it, and when he came to Japan and he knocked my door and he wanted to discuss this noise, and because he was doing noise music, right?
Yes.
And then he gave to me his first record, right? And then I played it in my room, and I said, "It's broken, Carsten. It doesn't make a music." And I said, "No, this is the right one. It's a noise music." So it's my first time, my encounter with the noise music, right? It's just making a stupid noise all the time. So
it's not stupid. It's German.
yeah, right. But
Carsten Nicolai is actually quite famous. He's done lots of collaboration with Sakamoto Ryuichi and some other Japanese musicians.
So before he started to work with Sakamoto, we went to drink. Me and Carsten went to Shimokitazawa to drink sake.
You, Nicolai, and the android?
No, two of us. Yeah.
Just the two, not the android?
Not the android. Android wasn't exist that time. Then I discussed, and then I found artists are very interested in this chaos and complexity and all this kind of stuff. Then after that, I also met Gabriel Orozco. I don't know whether you know. Gabriel Orozco is a famous Mexican artist. Okay. He was quite interested in the fractals, and he wanted to understand what is fractals and what is chaos. And so I explained him all the night, but okay, this is fractal, this is the equation. And people are so seriously try to understand what's the complexity that he's looking at. So it's not just doing things intuitively, but he really wants to understand the theory behind it. So that's the two encounters. I gradually noticed, okay, maybe that's interesting. This chaos and these equations and nonlinearity is not for understanding, not for the weather forecast or other things. But maybe artists needs this kind of concept. And then maybe the arts can be much, fruitful, and then it can be developed without, I don't know how to say it, but without just intuition. But the theoretical foundation for why this drawing goes like this way, not this way, can be established. That's why I thought it was interesting.
So, like, you are the creator of the mind, right? Because ultimately you write the code, right? And so, yes, it's non-linear. Yes, there is a chaos element to it, right? But at the end of the day, the basic parameters are the ones that you set up, right? So you say, for example, equal weight between the audio perception and the visual perception. That's something that you...
Yeah, I'm the God.
So you're God.
Yes, I'm the God.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm very happy with this. But like metaverse. The metaverse is so popular right now. It's getting popular, right? Metaverse, like VR things. But that's also everything can be coded, right? You can program everything, like your laws, the cities and streets and how you can behave in this world. Everything can be coded, right? And because of the blockchain and then NFT, that laws and the contract, everything can be coded. So the programmer can be the king, and this is fantastic. You don't have to be like have a big body and then have to live in a rich house, but the programming is everything, right?
But this is where it gets, so you're the God, you create the program and you call it the metaverse, so that's just sort of an expansion of this. And all of a sudden imitation happens. Because all of a sudden, the avatar, right, gets a mind of its own because it starts to imitate, all the other stimuli that the avatar receives. And so you dehumanize the human being because it actually, becomes more, a function of the avatar training or of the android's training than the training of the mother. Is that something that worries you?
My worry is not that point. My worry is that human intelligence is so bounded, so limited. So without avatar, without AI, or without programming, we can only go this level, right? But once you get AI or Android or another computational power, that we can go here, right? And this gap is only filled up with those AI or avatar or programming, right? So don't think that you're strong without AI or computer program. You can only get this level, right? And then I want to go to this level, right? You cannot understand everything by your own bare hands or bare brain, right? But if you can use your AI and a computer, you can get this level, right? And this level is that you can't find without having AI. So that's the thing. So this gap is something that I want to fill up.
So I'd like to ask on this point, how do you measure progress in this? In that, very specifically, what are the 2 or 3 breakthroughs that you are aiming to achieve that will indicate to you that you are making progress? And also, what is the ultimate goal?
Well, I try not to think ultimate goal, right, by myself. But, my experience with the GPT-3 is that, one day that I was playing with the GPT-3, then I found some sentences and expression that I didn't imagine by myself. Well, this machine can surprise me. And that, I think, is the first step of the progress. Because, talking to my friends, and then I talk to my GPT-3, and the GPT-3 is more, creative than, talking to my students at the time. So I was so surprised. Hey, this expression, this idea, I never thought about, right? But GPT-3 brought it to me. So there's something, right? Even though he is only, learning only the database, but still that thing that he gave it to me was something that could surprise me. So that's the surprising is one progress, right? And then I don't think about the ultimate goal, but maybe in the future that AI can tell us what's the new mathematics, the secret of life, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, creating a new language that we have to understand, we'll have to learn what is the mathematics, what is the language, we don't know, but the AI can tell us. So I think this is the kind of ideal ultimate goal, right? We need another intelligent system, not us, but that emerges in nature. So AI is something like that to me. That's why I'm interested in it. I don't know whether that's cool.
So catching on to that,
Yeah.
just for 30 seconds, just take this further.
Yeah.
So let's say there's a specific problem, that is the Earth is overheating, right? Mm-hmm. There is, all this problem with the ecology, and, you set up an AI, and they do the analysis, and they do all their wonderful stuff. And then the conclusion is that actually the only way to cure it is by killing all human beings. I mean, it seems like a perfectly reasonable outcome. I mean, where are the boundaries that you foresee if this, if the machine progresses and creates, something that is surprising, creates something that is more rational, something that is more pragmatic, is better at optimizing for the parameters that you are setting. Should we empower the machines?
Well, so several answers to that kind of question. First of all, I think the big message is that human is a bottleneck.
Human is the bottleneck.
Yeah, human is a bottleneck. That people should understand.
I feel that way with my children, but.
And also, I ask my students at my class that do we need a free will for what kind of occupation that you think that we need a free will? And then And of course, like an airplane in pilot, maybe we can replace with AI much more trustful, right? Because the pilot, maybe he suddenly sleeps and it's dangerous, right? And then also train taxi drivers and restaurants. There's no occupation that requires free will, right? If the free will is a big problem for making AI and Android, then you don't have to worry about that. Most of the occupation doesn't need free will, right? Automatic, stable system is powerful. However, one student told me that, for example, like if you want, for example, judgment, do you call it judgment?
Yeah.
Right? And then there's no right solution, maybe. So we cannot say which one is right, whether this crime is a real crime or is there any right choice? And then if there's no right choice, then maybe we need a free will to select one, right? That's maybe you can call it ethics, because it's you cannot automatize it because we don't have the solution to it. So not everything has. Most of the even the mathematical physics or anything doesn't have solution to it. If there's a solution, then I think the AI is powerful. But if there's no solution, then we have to think something else, some other things, right? That's why I think that's very important. So that's why we have to understand free will. That's why we have to make a robot or Android that can share culture and then same feeling with the human beings.
Do you think you'll be able to build a machine that has free will?
Well, I do hope so. That's my that's my one of my ultimate goals is yes. That's something that I want to do. Otherwise, if there's no free will or spontaneity in a system, then there's no difficulty. We just go, just increasing the competition. Then there is no difficulty. There's no difficulty. Everything is solved except free will or spontaneity, right? Spontaneity and free will is the only left paradox that we don't understand. Why there is it, right? The iPhone is already very powerful. My Mac computer is already so powerful. It can solve everything except free will, except consciousness, right?
But
why this such a complex, stupid thing that exists? And that we do have to understand. That's the missing paradox, I think.
I think we've got one question from the virtual world.
Yes, we have a question from Raquel Nakayama-san and Professor Ikegami-san. Such a fascinating obsession with AI, artificial life. I wonder if one of your alters can help in dealing with mental health issues or mental health, mental well-being.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's also a very good question. And like I said, so one of those moonshot projects that I try to get to accept is to invent what I call mindware. So like 100 years ago, there's only hardwares, right? We only have hardwares. Sony was very good at the hardwares, but people don't know about software. What is software 100 years ago? Then nobody knows how software, right? But everything is like, mechanical things, like recording things is always rotating. But the software emerges. Then Apple computer, there's no rotations, but it's just, hardware. I mean, that can record and, play the music. That's the hardware. But then there should be the third kind of thing, which I call it mindware. So the mindware is something that can share the feeling with others, and then it's in between software and hardware, or maybe that can be connected with each other, and then can interact with the human being. Yeah. So that's something that I want to make. So Author 3, the future problem is inventing mindware, and then implement it into the Author 3, so that he can more. Can understand like a new kind of theory of mind that author can have, and then understand what other human thinks, and then how to interact with humans. That's another kind of my dream. Yes.
Thank you, Professor Ikegami, for a fantastic presentation. And I do have a very short question, 3 words. Do androids dream? And
yes.
Let me elaborate, because I was thinking the human consciousness or thoughts or behavioral pattern. In your speech, I understood that this is basically reactionary. And reactionary, I mean, there is a stimulus and there is a reaction. And also imitation, which is also some kind of a reactionary action. But thinking about dreams, and you also said black box. And many people, in my understanding, think that dream is also a kind of enigma and a black box. And some people think that this is a kind of an error, paternal error in the thinking machine or something of the human being brain. And so that brings me back to my 3-word question. Do androids dream? Because if androids dream, that could be an error, and that could cause some kind of a problem, or that could be a breakthrough, because it directly relates to a black box. And if you said yes, and so I would love to listen to your answer. And has anybody thought about this kind of an issue, the thesis or paper? I am very much interested in that.
Yeah, there are many discussions on what is dream, what's the function of dream. And then the interesting point with my Android is that usually the robot does nothing when nobody's there, right? Just, switch off the button. But this robot, this Android, plays by himself when nobody's there, right? So he's always constantly moving and changing, so that the neural state is also changing all the time, right?
Is it connected to the internet, or it's its own closed system?
Well, right now it is closed, its own system, yeah. But they can also connect it to the website, web system. And then the dream is very important to because he learns, and then when he retrieves the memory, then he also remember the memory, the pattern. Then always, there's a noise is coming, because you cannot, completely remember the same pattern. And then when you remember it, always, there's some modification of it. So once you dream, then you can't, copy 100%, but you can gradually changing, like a mutation in noise. When you retrieve memory, then the memory is modified, and that is the source of creativity of the future actions, I think. I mean, that's the case of Orta. So Orta sleeps and dreams. That's why he can be creative. So,
and sorry, when you switch off the power, right? Then supposedly everything dies.
Yeah, but you can store those structures in another computer.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah. But let's say you don't do that, and then you switch it on again.
Yeah.
Does Alter get reborn and start from zero?
Yeah, by definition, yes.
By definition, yes.
Yeah.
Good. So you still have the off switch.
Oh, yes.
God, you really are God, Ikegami-sensei. Hi, Kyoko.
This is absolutely fascinating. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
If I just may ask, just to make sure I understand things. So it's the linear equations that are used for sort of robots, that predictability, you know what the outcome is, versus the nonlinear, which is what brings in the chaos, the free will. So for example, if you have a robot balancing a broom on its hand, that is linear equations. But if you want that robot to suddenly, I don't know, use it as a baseball bat and swing it, that comes from the nonlinear equations. Or is that sort of...
Well, that's a very interesting metaphor. I mean, usually like this one is usually it's very unstable.
Yeah.
so that it shows chaos. But if you you can balance this one, and it means that it finds the periodic orbit in this dynamics, so that you can control this one. So that we call it a controlling chaos phenomena. But usually the nonlinear high-dimensional system that you cannot control anything, right? However, this is the interesting point. Our brain has 100 billion neurons inside, right? And its connection is so nonlinear. So our brain is tons of chaos, right? And nobody can control it, right? It's so chaos. Even though we believe that 1 second before and 1 second after, that I'm still myself, and my consciousness still exists and then continues. But why is it? Like 100 billion neurons non-linearly interacting with each other, and it's so chaos, it's so turbulent. But still, we think, okay, I'm very calm today, I'm very happy, and I can see what happens in the outside. This is so strange, right? And then nobody can understand this one. Maybe, normal regular behavior, we can need 10 neurons, 10 or 20 neurons is enough to have this regular behavior. However, it's 100 billion neurons and it's uncontrollable nonlinear system. It's required to sustain our behaviors and intelligence. And that is something that we have to solve. And so it's a stability on top of unstable behavior. So huge unstable dynamics. On top of it, there's a stable conscious self-sense exists. And this is such a big paradox that nobody can understand this. Yes.
Just so Elon Musk is every once in a while in the news, for wanting to have a neural implant, right? And just quickly your thoughts on that.
I love that.
You love that idea.
Yes, I love that.
Are you going to volunteer to do this?
Well, first of all, I have to ask my students.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I had a kind of a basic question, and that is, what is the utility? A self-driving car has utility. What's the utility of a machine that can think? You said that we can go this far, and with AI we can go that far, but what do we do with it? How do we control it?
Sometimes I got the same question, and my answer to that one is that, what do you think of the utility of your dog? Or of your cat or of your dog? I said, okay,
I don't have a cat or dog. They don't have any utility.
I will.
So I don't think, that utility, there's no utility of my grandmother, right, for example. So this kind of question is I'm sorry. So I'm not a technologist. I'm not an engineer. I'm a theoretical physics and then physicist, and I'm interested in artificial life, not artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence is a side effect of artificial life. So first of all, we have to think why the life emerges and why life evolves. Then, after that, okay, because of this, intelligence can emerge. So that's the side effect. So your question is, what is the utility of living systems? Now, I don't know that. Somehow the living systems emerges in natural phenomena, right? One planet, some strange systems with free will emerges, and then that's why, as a physicist, also we have to understand. I want to understand what is it? What's this phenomena? So that's the kind of thing. So I don't know the utility function of it.
The reason why I was fascinated with Ikegami-sensei's work is exactly that. There's tons of people who are trying to solve a particular real-world problem using artificial intelligence, right? But he's sort of free-float, trying to get to the origin of things, right? I like this, artificial life versus artificial intelligence, right? As long as you're God. I think there were a couple of questions from the internet.
Sure. I think I can combine two questions into one. And one is, what do you expect from a free-willed robot? And after attached to that is, will Alter 3 or 4 or 5 be able to teach future generations of Alter and do research and all that things?
So the first question was, why is free will?
What do you expect from a free-willed robot?
Okay. Well, I think, if you want to trust somebody, I think the system needs free will. So that without free will, I don't think we cannot trust the system. So trustfulness or reliability is depending on whether the system has free will or not. So people think it's in opposite way, but I don't think it's true. And I think because of the free will, that's why that we can admit and we can respect, and then I can accept the system that in front of me. So the Alter in the future will tell us what is the new kind of mechanism that we miss in making robot. But maybe the Alter can have more new inspirations, new insights into what the robot that we have to make in the future. Yeah.
And do you think, like the second question, do you think that Alter will become self-generative so that he can create offspring?
Oh, I see. I think that's relatively easy to do that. I think if we can program it, because it's already like a 3D printer, right? 3D printer can generate 3D printer. So the 3D printer can generate 3D printer, can generate 3D printer. So there's a series of copies of 3D printer. I think it's not that big problem. Yeah. Okay. I think.
I want to, for 30 seconds, sort of switch the debate into a slightly different direction. Yep. Now, you are at the cutting edge, of this particular type of research. You have mentioned that you are applying to a moonshot program from the Japanese government. And can you just put a little bit into context in your field, the field of artificial life, the field of neural networks, the field of complex system analysis and research. Where is Japan's position relative to the United States, relative to Europe, in terms of the research community, in terms of the progress that is being made there? Can you just fill us in a little bit about sort of in economics, you would say sort of the competitive position of Japan in this particular, in your particular field?
That's also a hard question. So when artificial life starts, I think the European society or European people are more philosophically thinking, right? Well, when I go to the LF conference in Europe, they're always discussing so much philosophies behind artificial life, behind machines, behind chemical reactions. And that was very interesting. But when I go to the artificial life conference in the States, it's very different. They are more practical, and they just do what. So next, how to connect this one to this? So this kind of question, it's very interesting too, right? Very pragmatic and then very effective, right? So that tons of interesting robots like Roomba is also came from, right? And also DARPA is very strong and then using those robots for military purposes. But I think Europe, because of this long tradition, that they try to understand what is consciousness, what is self-awareness, and how it can be implemented with a robot, and Spinoza's idea of robot, how it can implement in a robot. This kind of argument is always going on there. So it's very different, I must say. This attitude is changing because of this, internet and information is so much circulated. So that I think that difference is rather reconciled. But I think the difference is also quite interesting, right? Yeah.
No, so the Americans are utilitarian, right? I mean, they want to make things happen, right? They want to. The first thing they think about is how can I connect this to the brain, yada. And the Europeans do what the Europeans do, which is have a glass of wine and talk. But what about Japan?
Yeah. I know that you're going to ask me that question. So in Japan, also in science, that always, try to follow United States approach, right? So that they bring like, okay, the budget must be, it shouldn't be distributed, but intensively, put into one, university, one department, one group. And then, okay, these guys doesn't have a good citation, so that we don't have to give money to this. So this is, I think, it's wrong, but that's what the Japanese government is going to do, right? It's always following what the United States want to do, right? But this the new kind of evolutionary theory of epistemology is also brought about in Japan. So. Some deep thinkers are more sympathetic with the European approaches. However, the money goes to those people that following United States approach, right? So I don't think the people following European approach can survive, right? As money-wise or budget-wise. So I think that's very unfortunate. That kind of tendency. But I'm a little bit exaggerating because it's the real world is more calm and it's not that radical. But the general tendency is that Japanese people, especially in science, is following United States approach, and then it's still so. I think.
Right. And then, sort of slightly personal question is like, you mentioned you're applying for a moonshot project.
Yeah.
I think all of us have heard about the moonshot projects, and we all kind of think, okay, that makes sense. It's a good idea. Can you tell us a little bit about how that actually works? Like, here it's from the Japanese government, right? The moonshot program.
Yeah, well, I don't want to criticize that because moonshot is a big one, right? It's a government project, and then basically they require us what happens in year 2050, right? And I don't know what 2050 look like, but that they want us to write about, but then also be very concrete. So do you think isn't it very paradoxical? I mean, think about 2050 and make it very concrete. So if we can make it very concrete, and it's not 2050. Yeah, so I'm very, I don't know how to say this because, but that's what the Japanese government want to do, right? That's why they call it moonshot. But I think that what we have to do is like a big project, like a Apollo project, right? That's what the Japanese government want to do again and again, right? We don't have that, Apollo project like in Japan, right? So if we have it, I mean, the side effect of Apollo project was fantastic, but because of the computer and then many other, airplanes, it's not just about the rocket, but its side effect is very, rich and fruitful. That's what we're expecting. So that kind of project is that we need. So when we say moonshot, means that the side effects should be rich enough so that we can learn a lot from the side effect. But for the current moon project, I don't know whether that can be possible because that we have to be very concrete. Like we have to, cure this disease or this, and that kind of thing is required. So my moonshot project cannot be accepted because it's more like, okay, I need a free will and then, mental health. And then, once you are with Android, that you can be more relaxed and, happy life. Nobody wants, I don't know whether people ideally want to do that, but people don't call it, very practical, something scientific strategy in 2050. So I don't know, that's. So I don't, sorry, it's still, I'm very confusing when I was writing Moonshot project. So,
right.
But so I think, as I said, we need like Apollo-like project again in Japan. And then, what's the Apollo project right now into the year 2022 is something that people want to see, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I have a question about education for emerging scholars in the field of artificial life. If you want to expand the community of your followers, what kind of strategies Japanese universities should take? Should we provide more engaged education with industry, or engage education with foreign universities. From your perspective, what would be the effective way to teach or refine our emerging scholars in the field of machine and artificial science? Thank you.
Yeah, that's also good and very difficult question. So there's one scholar. His name is Shunichi Amari. He's a well-known neuroscientist in neural network scientist in Japan, and internationally well famous one guy. And he said when he was young, as an assistant professor, that he goes to the university, and then he after lunch, and he played ping pong, and he played shogi, and then come back. That's his everyday life. But he finally became such a big shot right now. So it's not about the government, it's not about the field, but the university shouldn't have utility. So in Japan, we have it's from Soshi. Soshi is a Chinese famous philosopher, and he says utility of non-utility things, right? So utility of non-utility things is something that the university must follow. Well, from my experience, a bunch of interesting people exist in the world, of course, right? And then if you go to Europe or United States and discuss and give seminar, that is a big experiences, and you can your brain is of course get stimulated, and that should be the the seed of people's future research. So I think one of the things is increase the opportunity to exchange ideas and discussions. Yeah, I think that's only thing that I can think of. Like 30 years ago, the lab, universities are more friendly, exchanging ideas, and then these members of this lab can go to another lab and exchange ideas and then come back. But these days, it's more like yeah. So you can't see other people, and if you go discuss something and okay, don't tell this idea to other people because this is so. I don't think that's kind of secret. I mean, like my friend also said, okay, this idea is very important. So if you go to Europe, don't tell other people. This is crazy. I mean, science should be transparent. You have to exchange ideas with others. So so that's open systems in open mind and in open world is something. Is of course it's necessary for science to be distributed and science to make a big progress.
Thank you. I just one thing I noticed is your android, very expressive and arms, but you didn't give it any legs. Is that by intent, or do you want it to be more, remain reactive to humans that come to the robot, or are you thinking of like a future version that would be more proactively interact with humans?
Yeah. Well, it's just a shortage of money. So if people can give me money, I want to put
no legs. Money, no legs.
Yeah, no money, no legs. Yes, that's the answer. Yeah. Yeah, if we put the legs, then I invited my friend dancer here that we can make a dancing behavior with the professional dancers and androids. So yeah, legs are very important, but shortage of money. Yeah.
You know what is interesting on that? Because I was actually, why do you make it anthropomorphic, right? Because it looks like a human being. I mean, it's a machine. I mean, why don't you let it design itself?
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. Yeah,
but you understand what I'm saying? Because you do it so that, oh my God, it's not kawaii, it's kind of like yasashi, it's like, but still, there's no reason, right, for why it should look like a human being. I mean, it's like, your dog, finally, right?
Yes.
But I think you should let it design itself.
Okay, yeah.
Because that's like, if you can imagine yourself, right? It's always like in art class, in art school, right?
Yes.
That's one of the projects, right?
Yes.
Paint a portrait of yourself without looking in the mirror, right? And what do you come up with? These are interesting projects.
Okay, I take the point. Yes.
Oh God, I can give an idea to God. This is nice.
Thank you very much for a great talk. I think life technology can actually contribute to sustainable, making something system sustainable. But anyway, besides that, I wanted to ask you that your research went from simulated world to the real world. And I think the point was making a system that's open-ended. And that's why making something in simulated closed world doesn't really make it open-ended. But making it outside in the real world, maybe it contributes. But it seems like imitating human and making the robot, and that becomes divergent. I think that's kind of expected because the humans are the source of creativity. And in your experiment, you showed that these interactions between robots, that robot activities and movement actually seems to be very convergent. It doesn't make any interesting behaviors. So I was expecting, because you went from simulated world to the real world, I thought something more interesting should emerge. So do you have any approach that you learned from making these real systems to make something open-ended? Because I think that's the missing part in the artificial life research. Everything that we make or the artificial researchers made became very convergent. Nothing became interesting or open-ended as natural systems are. So I would really expect something more interesting from this research. So I just wanted to know your current thoughts.
Okay, thank you. So she's Mizuki Oka she's also an artificial life researcher. Yeah, that's a good question. If I know the answer, I can make a great open-ended system in the real world. But I think for the current AI, for example, like a deep learning, they try to make a representation in what we call latent space, which is reducing the dimensionality to the lower dimensional space. That's what we call representation, right? And then what I like the Brooks approach is Brooks says intelligence without representations. The environment or the real world itself is a representation. So what we have to do is just access the environment, then the answer is there, right? And then also affordance is William Gibson's idea of ecological psychology. The affordance means that our perception is not generating from inside, but what does it mean by perception is try to get the information from environment. So everything is already in the environment. So our perception is just try to picking up from environment. So the representation is not inside of the system, but in the outside, right? So what are we missing when we bring it to the real world is that how to access to the deep, complex environment and to get the information from there, right? Our computer simulation of artificial life in the cyberspace is always, it's a generative from the system. And the environment we settle up in the computer is not rich and complex enough, so that those agents in the computer missing how to access to the complex environment. So once we bring it to the real world, we have to think carefully how to access to the complex, deep environment, how to get the information from there. And if we can do this, and I'm pretty much sure that the environment is bottomless, right? So that even if you access to the environment, the system never converging to one thing, and it always shows open-ended evolution. That's why. So that's I think is missing in artificial life studies, that we have to think about, how to access to the real environmental complexity when we bring it to the real world. So that's the answer I can make it right now. Thanks so much for your question.
I think we've got one final question.
Yes, the final question is there a possibility of collaborating with Ryoji Ikeda, so on your future artistic projects?
Oh, he's already my friend, so yes. But Ryoji Ikeda is a great noise musician, and then, I know him for more than many years now. He has his own way, but I'm very happy if we can collaborate with him, yes. Can I take Patrick's question, but he's ready.
Sure. Maybe it's a good closing question, but as we learn more about how the brain works, the digital DNA, if I may call it that you're creating, that initial DNA, how's that changing? I mean, I think in some ways probably the artificial life is teaching us how the brain works because we're understanding that, and also our increasing understanding of how the brain works is also, so it's a very interesting relationship. And so how has that been evolving? How has that been changing how you've been programming the Android? And where's the gap?
Can I paraphrase, like, how we changed the way that I made Android by making Android by itself, or because of creating a life, and that changes the way that I...
Well, your digital DNA is based on our understanding of the brain. Is that correct? So when you're programming an Android, you're probably using our understanding of how the brain works to then...
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, I see. So, yeah, I misunderstood, okay. Yeah, well, so when you say digital brain, it means the author's brain.
Yeah, so there's a digital cortex, right? But I'm saying the digital DNA in a sense is what you're programming.
When I was a student, right, I made a interesting living systems, and I brought it to the biologist. And the biologist said, okay, Takashi, it's very nice, very interesting, but the real biological phenomena is much more interesting and complex. I was so shocked. Right? It's many times that I bring, hey, this is great. And I said, oh, no, but the real one is more important. So I changed my mind and said, okay, maybe the natural phenomena or real biological phenomena is a part of the big artificial systems. So first of all, don't look at the real one and make something, とんでもない complex things, right? And then partial of them can be corresponding to the real one, but the most part of this one is something, it's not can made correspondence to the real one, right? So I don't think we can learn a lot from the natural things, but first of all, based on the principle of mathematics and computer programming and complexity theory, you have to, out and out, making something complex phenomena. And then probably the part of it can be corresponding to the real brain, but the most part of it is something that unknown phenomena. That is something also I'm very much expecting. So I believe in power of mathematics and physics and computer programming. So that's why. So,
but it's also a potentially very dangerous way, right? Because
it's very dangerous.
You've got the mathematical tools, right, that try and through the prism of the mathematical tools, you're trying to deduce what the brain might be functioning like, right? But it may actually be something completely different. Some physics or some maths that we just simply don't know about at this particular point in time. And that's where it's interesting in my perspective, because if indeed the machine progresses, and that's what's the goal, if the machine creates a new mathematics and is capable of teaching that new mathematics to us human beings, that's, I think, when we enter a new dimension. On this thought, you see, I'm German. This is, I wanted to, we've run out of time. We could talk endlessly. He is really good in an akachochin. So the more sake he drinks, the more intelligent he becomes. And, the more spontaneous and creative everything becomes. So the source of life and the interesting stuff, starts to happen there. I want to thank everybody, particularly...